Please welcome to the stage Jonathan Safran Foer.
Thank you. I often find it comforting to think of climate change as an inevitable apocalypse. The leap to that extreme is soothing, in much the same way that ignoring climate change, my other psychological resting place, is. Both perspectives, equally out of touch with the science, spare me from the complicated mix of feelings including terror, anger, guilt, sadness, responsibility, and resolve that an honest confrontation with our situation would require. They also excuse me from having to participate. When I am in my we are doomed mode, or in my we are going to be fine mode, the we does not include me. The truth is, we are not doomed, and we are not going to be fine. We're near the beginning of a process of profound loss. Some of the loss has already been determined. Most of it has not. The actions of nations and corporations will determine how much we lose. So will the actions of individuals. To a large extent, the actions of individuals will determine the actions of nations and corporations, just as the actions of nations and corporations will determine the actions of individuals. The scale of the crisis is enough to make any effort feel futile. It's enough to make every effort feel necessary, as if those were the only two choices: make no effort or make every effort. I cannot be a perfect eater. I cannot stop flying or driving altogether. I've already contributed 2 children to the overpopulation. If my only choices are to do nothing or to do everything, I will do nothing. I recently published a nonfiction book about how hard it is to sustain sensible feelings about climate change, and harder still to act on those feelings. A few nights ago, at the signing, after a reading from the book, a young couple handed me their copy to autograph. And they opened it to the title page, which is ordinarily empty, and it was filled with their own writing. And I asked what it was. And the woman said, "We're getting married next month, and we decided tonight that if we don't have a plan for how we're going to live our life together, then we're just going to continue to do what we've always done. And this is our plan." And what it said was, no meat consumption except when invited for a dinner, and there's no other option available. Eat vegan 2 days a week. Maximum 2 children. Only car sharing, maximum 1,000 miles a year. And then instead of a traditional signature, they'd asked me to sign a line that was marked witness. And it hadn't occurred to me until I saw their plan that despite my knowledge and feelings about climate change, despite the statistics that I could fire off at dinner parties and the inspiring posters I could make for marches, despite all the words that I'd written and said on the subject, I didn't have a plan for how I was going to participate. And witnessing that couple's resolve, it was suddenly so obvious to me that I needed one. Without a plan, I would more or less continue to do what I've always done. And worse, revert to extremes of thinking, like we're doomed or we're going to be fine, instead of behaviors that actually matter. What matters is that we do less of the things that we know cause global warming. We don't have to stop eating animal products, stop flying, stop driving, or stop having babies. But we do need to do far, far less of these things. I have a relatively easy time adjusting my diet, but find it very hard to imagine how I will fly significantly less. Others have the opposite experience. We don't all need to reach precisely the same conclusions. The differences between our plans will be even more inspiring than the overlaps. But each of us needs to have a plan that reflects not only our values, but our full ability to respond to this crisis. We need to write down our plans and share them with our family and friends. And that will risk admitting to our own limits, which might appear painfully unambitious when put into words, and having witnesses to what would otherwise be personal decisions, and making ourselves vulnerable to accusations and feelings of hypocrisy when we fall short of our goals. But what if instead of measuring our distances from the extreme of perfection, we measured our distance from the extreme of doing nothing? What if we stepped into the vast space between doing everything and doing nothing and simply started right now doing as much as we can? My plan: eat vegan for breakfast and lunch, vegetarian for dinner. Don't fly for leisure in 2020. 3 cab rides a week, maximum. And here I need a line about how I'm going to make advocating for legislative change part of my life. And to be perfectly honest, I haven't yet figured out this part of my plan. I was going to say something about calling or writing to elected officials, but that just felt like bullshit, both in terms of how little it would ask of me and how little it would accomplish. So I'm putting a pin in this one in front of all of you and would be genuinely grateful for your suggestions. My email address is jonathansafran4, the number 4, @gmail.com. So I know this isn't enough, and I know that I'll fall short every now and then. But for years, probably like many of you, I've heard myself saying, someone has to do something, over and over and over. And so now I'm saying aloud, saying to you what I will do. And more importantly, I've been saying it to my kids, brothers, parents, and friends, asking them to hold me accountable. Emphasizing individual responsibility doesn't need to distract from corporate and federal responsibility. We absolutely need structural change. We need a global shift away from fossil fuels and toward renewable energy. We need to enforce something akin to a carbon tax, mandate environmental impact labels for products, replace plastics with sustainable solutions, and build walkable cities. We need to end subsidies for animal agriculture, hold factory farming corporations responsible for the environmental destruction they incur, and force the price charged for meat to reflect the actual price of meat. We need a political revolution. These changes will require shifts that individuals alone cannot realize. But putting aside the fact that the collective revolution is always made up of individuals, led by individuals, and reinforced by hundreds of millions of individual revolutions, we will have no chance of achieving our goal of limiting environmental destruction if individuals don't make the very individual decisions to live differently. When a radical change is needed, many argue that it's impossible for individual actions to incite it, so it's futile for anyone to try. This is exactly the opposite of the truth. The smallness of individual actions is a reason for everyone to try. Future generations will not care about what we felt. They will care about what we did. Acknowledging the science of climate change and not acting on it is the most widespread and destructive form of denial. Make a plan for what you will do. Write it down. Give it words, numbers, days of the week. Allow your friends and families to witness it. And know that those not yet alive will witness it as well. Thank you.